Alright, let's quickly go over what polymorphism is. Real simple. If you waste your time going on Google or Wikipedia, you're just going to get way more confused and more lost. So let's break it down. Very simple. If you ever get asked what is a polymorphism, simple answer is, how do you handle multiple classes like they're one thing? And those classes, typically they will have a hierarchy system, which is a superclass, subclass, and subclass. Let's look at this graph here. The graph that I drew earlier, right? Basically begins with having this superclass. Then the superclass breaks down to other subclasses. Now let me just put a label on it so it's not so blank looking. And from the living organism, we'll have, say, animals. Animals and plants. Get that correct. And over on this side, we'll have plants. So what this graph is showing is we've got a superclass of living organism, which it looks like I even spelled it wrong. Living organism, all right. So in order to understand polymorphism, you also got to understand how classes and superclasses work. This is a perfect example here, right? The superclass, which is a living organism, and it breaks down into two parts: animals, plants. Now let's further break down animals. Great apes, right? Which is part of an animal. Canis. On the great ape, we can also break it further down. Humans, gorillas, domestic cat, tigers, domestic dogs, wolf. Now this fully completes or concludes the animal kingdom. On the other side of living organisms, right? We've got plants, and underneath plants, let's just say flowers, for instance, trees. So you can see plants, flowers, and trees. So flowers and trees are subclasses of plants. Now we could even go further down. Rose, say hibiscus. On the tree side, let's put an oak, say lark, right? So this is an organization chart of living things that we have everyday life. Basic, simple stuff. Anyone can follow this. Anyone who understands how charts work, like a company chart, you can understand this. So where does polymorphism come in place? Now, if I were to have a group of humans, right? Say I met a bunch of humans. I can put those humans inside a container that can hold just humans. If I have gorillas, I could put them in a separate container that holds gorillas. But I can't add humans and gorillas together because they're not the same thing. Polymorphism is what lets us add two different classes into one container and kind of treat them like they're all the same thing. So let me pull up my little chart here. So say, for instance, I've got a container of humans. In my container of humans, I can add Andy, Bob, and Charlie, and that works fine. This will work. Now, if I were to have my container, right, this container here, so I put it right here, and if I added Andy, actually just copy the whole thing, makes it easier. Alright, so I've got the same container, right? And I added, if I add Andy, Bob, Charlie, and say a gorilla named King Kong, this will not work. And why is that? So basically this will not work because King Kong is a gorilla, and you can't really add a gorilla into a container for humans. It's separate. They're not the same thing. You can't do that. But what if I wanted to? Like I said, that's where polymorphism comes in. And in order to do that, say I wanted to add a gorilla and humans all in one thing. And the best way to do that is to go back into the org chart. Now let's go back for a second. So from looking at this chart, what does a human and a gorilla have in common? they basically come from the great ape. So we'll have to have a container of great apes, and this will work. It's plain and simple. Polymorphism, when you hear that, it sounds kind of scary and weird and overly complicated, but you're gonna learn polymorphism like a boss. Everything I teach is really simple. We don't make stuff complicated. We're not here to show off, we're here to learn. Let me pull up some code and just show you guys in code. All right, Visual Studio, C#. I've already written out all the classes. So here we've got the living organism, right? Which is our superclass. And from that, we get the animal, which comes off the living organism. Then we get the plants, and dog, a flower, all of that. So I've written all of them out. So every single class that I have here basically have this public function called who are you, and in that function they basically just say who they are. So if you have a living organism and you ask it who are you, it will just print to the screen, I'm a living organism. All right, so let's begin. All right, so here to run the code, let me create a human. Let me say human Alex equals new human, right? Make another human Bob equals new human. Plain and simple. Now let's make a container. It's going to be a list of humans. Container equals new list of humans. Basically what I'm doing here is I've got a container that I can store stuff in. I could put stuff inside it. What kind of stuff can I put in there? Humans. So this allows me to do something like this. Container dot add. Let's add Alex. Now Alex is in our container. I can add more people in there. So let's do container dot add Bob. So let's just quickly so we've got this container here, and in that container we just added Alex and we added Bob, and everything is fine. Let's print out the contents of this container. This allows us to print out all the contents of container, right? Basically, it's a for loop that runs throughout the entire container, and for each stuff that's in there. And basically, what this little snippet code here does is it goes through this container and prints out everything that's inside it. Right now, the container only has two things: Alex and Bob. So let's print out, see what happens. So here it is. These are the two items inside the container, Alex and Bob. So it's saying I'm a human. Cool, right? All right, now let's try making, let's make a gorilla. King Kong equals new gorilla. All right, now let's add King Kong to our container. Container dot add King Kong. See what happens. I get this red squiggly line. If I were to mouse over it, it would say cannot convert gorilla into a human. Basically, this container is only for humans, so it will not allow me to add King Kong because King Kong is a gorilla, not a human. Which means I'll have to do something like this. I'll have to do list gorilla container 2 equals new list of gorillas. Now I can take this container, which is for gorillas, right? Put it here. and the squiggly line goes away. It went away because this second container is for gorillas, not for humans. So you can safely add a gorilla into it. But that's not what we want. We don't want that. We don't want to have two lists. It's just too much. We want one list. So what is the one list that we can do that fits a human and a gorilla? Well, let's go back to our org chart that we had earlier. Like we said, what does a human and a gorilla have in common? Which is great ape, right? So if we go back here, we can change our list to a great ape. Just copy that over here. And bam, you can see that red squiggly line goes away. And let's just prove this works. There you go. I'm a human, gorilla. You're beginning to get a hang of it, of how polymorphism works. Which means this container can take different forms. So it can contain a human and it can contain a gorilla. Stop this for a second. Let's make a cat. Let me add a cat, Garfield. Equals new cat. Now, in the container, let's try adding Garfield. Container.add Garfield. See what happens. It doesn't like that. And if you take a wild guess why it doesn't like this like that, it's because this list is for great apes, and a cat is not a great ape. We'll have to make a new list of cat, which we don't want to do. That doesn't define the polymorphism. So in order to add a cat, let's go back to the org chart. So what does a cat and humans and gorillas have in common? They all come from animals. We can all agree. So if we switched this to animal, our container to hold animals, right? And then it all works. So in the same container where we added humans, we can add gorillas, and we can also add a cat. Let's print that out. As you can see, human, gorilla, cat. All right, so one final step. Let's say I make a rose, red rose, new rose, right? And I try to put that in here. Container.add red rose. Oh, the red line is back. How can we get rid of it? Let's see. So human, gorilla, cat, and a rose. They all come from a living organism. So that's one thing they all got in common. They're living organism. So let's switch our list. Let's make this list a living organism. And everything all works. Human, gorilla, cat, and rose. Everyone in the living organism kingdom is happy. So that's just the basic breakdown of polymorphism. Being able to take different classes and all add them into one thing and treat them like the same thing.